Good morning, everyone. Jane Monreal here with you. It is 9 o'clock Monday morning. Welcome to a new work week. In the Charlotte area, boy, is it hot, hot, hot. They make songs about that. Hot, hot, hot. And so right here at the top of the newscast from the Live Impact studio is Chris Mulcahy joining us now. And we are going to be weather alert today, Chris.
Yeah, don't forget about certain artists that used to wear Band-Aids on their faces. That's another good hot song.
Yep, Hot in Her.
Yeah, Hot in Her.
Hot in Her,
Yep, mhm.
yes.
Yes, if you don't know, Nelly used to have one Band-Aid he used to wear on his face, and then he does not do that anymore for some reason.
He's grown up.
Yeah, so yesterday, 95 was our high, so that was our hottest day. Today, 98 is the high I have, and looks like today could be the first time that we're feeling like the hundo mark, and we could be 100 degrees actual air temperature tomorrow. Who's excited?
No one.
Ooh, okay, no, yeah, me neither. Truly, you're going to have these spikes occasionally, and we're going to get into actually how rare 100-degree temperatures are typically here in the Charlotte area. But first, let's go to 5 different cameras. I say 5, it's usually 6, but Beach Mountain decided to quit on me. There was things happening there. But everything's gorgeous. So it's a beautiful shot in all these cameras. Blue skies, but looks can be deceiving, as the saying goes. And that's exactly it, because we're going to have that sunshine all day long. And how hot it felt yesterday was 98 degrees Charlotte, 97 was the peak around Gastonia, and then 96 in Concord. The thing with yesterday is we hit a high of 95 for actual air temperature, but the moisture values actually came down. It wasn't overly muggy. If there's certain afternoons you're like, ugh, gross feeling. And yesterday it was hot, but it wasn't grossly hot because of that moisture value. And we don't really have that either today. I think you have the best shot at hitting that 100-plus mark about how we feel. I think 102 looks to be kind of a safe bet. But our highs today, right around 98. 100, I think, is going to be the first shot around Chirag. 96 around Hickory. Big thing today, lots of sunshine, not much of a breeze. That is where that heat just stacks up. And we're also into the heat dome where heat starts to build. Our record high for this day in climatology, 100 degrees set back in 2015. And 2015 was actually a significant stretch because that was the last time we had multiple 100-degree temperatures in a given summer. And I'll actually get right to that. So last year we hit 100 degrees, and it was 2 years before that we hit 100 degrees once during a summertime. But check this out. Between 2021 back to 2016, we did not hit 100. It is actually more rare occurrence to hit 100 degrees once during a summer than for us to actually hit it multiple times. Okay. But back in 2015, we did hit it 5 times. It's actually incredible. So dating back to 1879, we've had a total of 139 100-degree days here in Charlotte. 29 in June, 74 in July, 31 in August, and 5 in September. The last time that we did it here in Charlotte was July 5th, 2024, a day after July 4th, obviously. 350 days ago, 101 degrees. And the other stat I have for you is I mentioned that this is pretty much a rarity. Well, this is according to Tricia Palmer from the National Weather Service here at Greenville Spartanburg, that 45 Charlotte summers have hit 100 degrees plus one or more times. 2024 was one of them. So that makes 31% of all of our Charlotte summers hit 100 degrees. The other ones don't. So usually when we have a shot of it, say if this hits 99, we do that all the time. But it's odd. And the hottest we've ever been in Charlotte history, 104. We can't get past that mark. So just a little bit of climatology there, just to kind of put in perspective. Tomorrow's the only day that thinks that we will hit 100 at Charlotte Douglas, but just wanted to let you know. Here's our splash pad forecast.
Is that JT?
That is JT.
Aww.
As I mentioned, I don't like to show his face or anything like that, even though it's
good.
the cutest thing ever. Kid could be a model, but instead he'll just be a splash pad model for me. And plus, that I can legally use this. But we've been going to a lot of splash pads recently, just because it's been so hot. And the thing is with the splash pads is like JT invited me to go out on there when you have the wet pavement is wonderful, but then trying to get to your towel, that's where it's frighteningly hot. So any of that concrete that's surrounding a splash pad, this is actually Latta Park in Dilworth, by the way. I've never been there. We try to do once per week. The actual concrete could be as much as 130 degrees. Blacktop as much as 150 to 155. And I took my dog for a walk yesterday around 10 to 11. And do you know those Play 60 areas the Charlotte Panthers have?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize that that's essentially made up of old tires and ground up rubber.
Yeah.
That's getting just as hot. So yeah, you be careful about those different surfaces. Like Romeo started walking on, I started whimpering. I was like, "What's wrong?" I felt this like, "Oh, dude, I'm so sorry," because I thought it was okay. It's just fake grass that's hot rubber, so be careful of those type of deals. As far as how we're actually going to be feeling today, I think the max is about 99 to 103, so somewhere in that range for our big real feels. But going back to splash pad, not to just show the back of JT's head, but the extreme UV index, so it goes up to 11, usually peaks around 1 p.m. 11 to 3 is the technical range, but it's really from noon to 2 that each and every day, at least over the next month or so, that's where you have your highest chance to burn. That's because the sun's angle is the highest. That's where you get the most UV rays. So if you're going to wear sunscreen or you don't want to, this is the time to do it, right around noon to the early morning hours, or early afternoon hours, excuse me. And that's also the kind of weird thing here too, because look at 8 p.m., 96 degrees. So that means by the latter part of the evening, and here I'll bring up tonight, we're still going to have a heat index likely in the 90s to close out the evening. That's how significant it is. And if I bring up tonight's forecast, watch this. 85 feels like 90. See, the night forecast, the numbers are in blue because it's usually for wind chills, not like anything specifically. 3 a.m., 80s feeling like 84, and even 77 still feeling like 81. So we're realistically, because we're holding on to more moisture overnight tonight, still going to have a heat index for all hours of the day and all hours of the night. That is substantial, and that just really shows how hot it is. And when you're that warm through the overnight and that much moisture, you're going to have something like this. Like we already had 78 that was feeling like 80 degrees and going forward. We also are going to be looking out for some heat advisories. That is Stanley, Anson, and Richmond County that is under a heat advisory for today until 8 o'clock. And then we look forward to an extreme heat watch for the same counties in all areas off towards the east. Now, it's complicated where we live because there are 4 different National Weather Service offices that divide us up. Greenville, Spartanburg, that covers most of our counties, they say they're not doing a heat advisory. They said it's pretty much as close as you can come because when things are starting to feel like 105 plus, that's where they'll issue one. Tomorrow, I think the absolute hottest that we'll have for the Charlotte area is 105. But it's not going to be visited that long. So it's usually for 2 or 3 hours that they will want it to reach that mark to have an advisory or a watch or a warning. So likely this will turn over to an extreme heat warning, but worst case scenario for tomorrow, we will have a heat advisory for Charlotte showing that, hey, you could feel as much as 105 degrees because our peak heat index, as I mentioned, 103, 105, 104. After that, these start to come down. Temperatures actually come way down, but the moisture comes up. So the way the heat index formula and how our bodies work, the more moisture that's in the air, the hotter that we can actually feel because we don't sweat as much. So that allows us to pretty much retain a lot more heat so our bodies start to overheat. And that's why we usually give an advisory. Whenever there's a heat advisory, that means that heat exhaustion is likely. Whenever you have an excessive heat warning, that means that heat stroke becomes more likely. So that's kind of the dividing line there. Today's forecast I mentioned is 98, 100, 98, 94. So 94 still could feel like close to 100. But one thing that really changes going forward is that we start to see the return of our rain and thunderstorm chances. So we have this big old heat dome, this big guy that's going to prevent the rain. But then outside of this, sometimes you can have what's called ridge riders, or my favorite term, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. And what this just means is the way that there's a rotation of clockwise rotation around a high pressure system, you can have some storms that sometimes ride on the outside. So as this starts to shrink and moves off towards the west, that's what we could have. Also, troughs can develop. It just really just gives us a better chance for rain. So I have a scattered likelihood that we have rain pop up on Wednesday and Thursday. But these are the type of storms that pop up, they exhaust themselves for up to a 45-minute period, and then new ones start to form nearby. And I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. Problem with these is since they're so slow moving that if certain pieces move over the same area at certain points, we also have flash flooding potential. So we're weather alert today, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday for heat, but then also kind of an outside chance for a little bit of localized flooding and lightning and all that jazz to end your Wednesday and Thursday. So welcome to summer, y'all,
Yep.
here in the Carolinas. Here's a look. You have a chance for rain on your Wednesday morning, but I think this is interesting. Notice these storms starting to evolve. This is 3 o'clock and then 5 o'clock. Not really much moved, so that literally is the outflow, which is the cold, rain-cooled air, pushes out into the warm air mass and pops up new thunderstorms. You see this all the time. Look what happens from 5 to 8. It just kind of circulates back around. So it almost creates its own little low pressure system as it's starting to feed into itself. So I think it's really late Wednesday through your Wednesday evening. You have a chance for slow moving thunderstorms. These are the ones on this environment when it's this warm that it's really loud thunder, or the ones that resonate if they jog into the evening. And we'll do that again heading into your Thursday. So your 7-day forecast, this is super hot, and then we have regular hot after this.
Just regular hot.
Just regular hot.
We'll
you know,
be happy with regular hot, I guess.
it's about perspective, y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
You turn up to 100, it's like 92. It's like, ooh, this is nice.
yeah,
great.
feels good.
So there it is. People focus on the graph, like the peak heat index, so much. Literally, that's the hottest you will feel. Most likely today, 98 will feel like 100 to 102 for the max. 100 is still just a possibility. Even the 100-degree day, you're in the mid to the upper 90s most of it. And that's just the absolute top. So if you have like kind of a peaked graph like this, it literally is just that little pinnacle that you're visiting for a very brief amount of time. But we're always going to say the worst that it could feel. So there it is. Heading into the weekend, just usual summer pattern. Our typical average is 89. That moves to 90 by the end of the month. And then we hit 91. So it's really just business as usual once we get past this big heat wave.
Yeah,
Wow.
splash pad was the key.
Splash
Oh,
pad.
it was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think today, because Dad doesn't feel like doing it, I'm going to find something inside to do with the young one. So,
Yeah.
AC.
yeah.
Yeah.
Something with AC. Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
it's exhausting. I mean, there is that, the heat just
Yeah.
kind of,
It takes it out of you.
it takes it out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and truly, like if you do things in the morning, you're fine. But we were out and about around 10 o'clock on Saturday. But then once you get to noon to 1 where you have that sun right above you, you're like, ugh,
Yeah.
I'm moving slower.
Yeah. I did go to Crowder's Park.
Oh,
and,
how's that?
Walked through the shade, mostly through trees.
Okay.
And and it was in the morning.
Yep.
So it was also tolerable.
Same.
Yeah.
I was out and about at 10.
Okay, yeah,
The
see?
weenie dogs.
Did it in the morning.
That's usually, oh yeah, how did the weenie?
I have a surprise for you.
Oh,
Check
you
Oh,
do?
what do you
Out.
have?
Okay, I'm so excited.
Ready?
Yes.
Do it.
What?
I took video of the weenies
Oh
for
my
you.
gosh.
Oh
This
my
is-
gosh.
It was a bunch of us. It was
Wow.
around 10 a.m. So, and thankfully, as you can see, a lot of the
Wow.
park was shaded. So it
Yes.
was really nice for us
For dogs and dog parents.
and dog parents. So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That
About 30,
is
to,
a
30 to
meetup.
40 of them out there
Oh
at
my
like
gosh.
the peak.
Carlene, that is so
Wow.
cute.
This is what joy looks like.
yes.
It was a joyous time.
Oh
Turkey
my
have a good time.
He had a
gosh.
great time.
And then probably exhausted. So had
yeah,
some good napping.
He was tired
That's what
after
it's
that.
about with the
We were only
doggies.
out there for an hour, and it was enough.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow. yeah,
awesome.
yeah. The walk that I went on with Romeo, he circles like a cat when he's trying to lay down, but he
Yep.
did one circle and just plopped, like it shook
Just
things.
Yours flops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Romeo flops too. So Turkey, if he's done, just
Yep.
flops.
And a good reminder, though, for pets with their paws.
Yes.
This is nice in the cool grass and the shade, but what is it, 7 seconds?
7 seconds
To
to
the
back of your hand.
Back of the hand,
to
right?
test.
The
Yep.
things we learn.
Yes.
We got it.
We got you covered.
All right.
Yeah. So one word: hot.
Hot.
Even for wiener dogs.
Even for wiener dogs.
That was great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. That was great.
Adorable.
See, I was here. Now I'm up here.
right.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
awesome.
Monday.
Smiling
Let's
face.
Yeah.
give you some weenie dogs.
Oh
and-
man. Yeah, can you go to that if you don't have a wiener
Yeah,
dog? Okay.
sure.
I just wanted to double check.
Just to watch.
Yeah, just
it's
to-
like people watching.
Yeah.
Dog
Yeah, I wasn't
watching.
sure if it was frowned
didn't know.
upon if all of a
No.
sudden you're coming to a wiener dog event without one. So
Yeah,
okay,
you can
that's
come
good.
With me.
That's
The next
okay,
one. We do
all
it
right.
once a month.
Oh, you do plus ones. Okay, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
great. All right, Chris Mulcahy, thank you for coming in.
Stay
and,
cool.
Good stuff. We're going to try to stay cool, cool-minded, cool heads, and drink a lot of water.
Drink a lot of water.
Yeah, stay hydrated. All right, speaking of which, one of the most vulnerable populations is our folks, the elderly, those with suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia, those kinds of matters who have caretakers. So we do have an important conversation coming up here in 15 minutes with more detailed safety tips that you and yours can take through this week and certainly through the summer as we head into, the dog days of summer and this weather alert stretch of very hot temperatures. All right, want to talk about now, of course, the big news around the world is after the U.S. hit 3 of Iran's nuclear plants over the weekend. We are bracing ourselves for what is next. Retaliation from Iran, they have said so, and possible sleeper cells that Iran has warned if the U.S. were to get involved as they did. So Alice Barr is in Washington with the very latest. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC+.
This morning, amid the fallout over U.S. airstrikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites, key questions remain, including the extent of the damage.
The strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Pentagon officials say it's too soon to know for sure. B-2 bombers are back home at their Missouri base as we get a first look at the Iranian targets struck, before and after images showing the massive impact on one of the nuclear facilities. And the looming question, how will Iran respond? President Trump promising far greater force if Iran does retaliate. Vice President Vance framing the U.S. strikes as a limited move aimed at pushing Iran toward peace.
We're not at war with Iran, we're at war with Iran's nuclear program.
While President Trump posted, quote, if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? That's a shift from his administration's messaging so far.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change.
And could add to concerns for many Republicans, uneasy with another prolonged U.S. Middle East entanglement. GOP Representative Thomas Massie openly criticizing the president's move.
He promised us which we would put America first.
President Trump vowing to campaign against Massie, who joined many Democrats questioning whether the strikes were constitutional without congressional approval. Now, as anti-war protests break out across the U.S., huge billboards in Israel thanking President Trump. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
And we are learning this morning that Iran's top diplomat is set to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin later as the U.S. watches on. I want to take you out live now to a stream event. This is NATO Summit in The Hague. This is a pre-summit press conference by the Secretary General happening live right now on Live Impact News on WCNC+.
Irreversible path of Ukraine to enter NATO. And that is still true today, and it will still be true on Thursday after this summit. But that comes to your second question. As I announced, we thought for this year 20 billion was pledged by Canada and the European allies. It is now over 35 billion. Last year it was just over 50 billion for the full year. This year, not even before we reached the 1st of July, so the half-year mark, we are already at over 35 billion. So this shows you, and this is the evidence, that nobody in Europe, in Canada, including, by the way, the United States, loses sight of what is happening in Ukraine.
All right, we'll come back to this side of the room. The gentleman here in the front row in the dark suit.
James Bays, Al Jazeera. Secretary General, NATO's position for more than 3 years has been very consistent. It's been criticizing Russia for breaching the rules-based international order by invading Ukraine. Doesn't all of that seem very hypocritical, given the US's recent actions, which are clearly dubious under international law?
Well, I don't agree with that assessment at all. Obviously, NATO is concentrated on the Euro-Atlantic, but I do not at all, not one syllable of your assessment, sorry, on what you just said. With all the respect, of course, for your news outlet, which I always respect, but I think you have this completely wrong.
All right, and staying in the front row, the woman here.
Maria Vasiliou, Tanya agrees. Back to the defense spending plan, you said there is going to be a review in 2029. How are you going to ensure until then that there is credible growth in spending by all members? And also, I mean, in other words, taking also into consideration the exemption for Spain, how are you going to ensure that this pledge, this plan does not become another empty promise? Thank you.
Well, let me first say on your particularly alluding to Spain, NATO has no opt-outs. And NATO doesn't know side deals or side deals. So that's on the particular question you ask about Spain. What all allies will do is that, of course, they have the sovereign right and also the flexibility to determine their path for delivering on the NATO commitments. That means how much they will spend annually, and this is exactly what we are doing. The big difference from the Welsh pledge in 2014 is this, that there will be annual reports on what nations are spending. There will be regular reviews on what is happening. In 2029, we will take stock, including on the international security situation, whether we might need to increase the amount of spending we need to do as a collective alliance, for example.
All right, front row here on the corner.
Laurențiu Ungureanu, Hot News Romania, Secretary General. 9 years ago, at the summit in Warsaw, the alliance officially recognized that hybrid threats and information warfare pose real challenges to member security. With rising hybrid attacks, including manipulation campaigns, especially on NATO eastern flank and in the Black Sea region, how can member states determine when such aggression is serious enough to justify a collective response?
Well, obviously, we are not making our adversaries any wiser than they are today when that comes to the specific question. But your question raises a very important issue. And that is the important issue of hybrid threats, the important issue of cyber attacks. And let me again state that I hate that word hybrid because it sounds too cuddly. And it is very serious. These can be assassination attempts, the jamming of commercial airplanes in the Baltic, an attack on the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. So this is very serious. And that is one of the reasons why on the list of discussions for tomorrow, this is a big issue. Hybrid, including, of course, cyber.
All right, the third row, gentleman on the end.
Thank you. My name is Ruslan Ignatovich. I'm journalist, Belsat TV, Poland. Mr. Secretary General, does NATO see a real threat of a possible new Russian invasion from the territory of Belarus during or after so-called Zapad 2025 Russian-Belarusian military exercises into Ukraine or into the Baltic states?
Well, as I said, our alliance is so strong today that if Russia would try something today, they know our reaction will be devastating. So it would be very, very unwise by Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin or his crony in Belarus, in Minsk, to try anything against us. But obviously, we have to be sure that in 3, 5, 7 years from now, we are as strong as we are today. And that is why it is urgent that in this meeting, we will not only decide on the higher defense spending, but because of the changed security situation, we will have to spend more. So that when the call comes for each of our allies to chip in a collective endeavor to defend NATO territory, to defend every inch of NATO territory, that everybody is ready, has not only committed on paper, but also in reality, in terms of what they need to deliver to that collective endeavor. And let's not forget, I think it was in the FT this morning, an article making the difference between an alliance based on I will help you if you get attacked. Of course, that is what NATO will do, Article 5, but NATO is more. We have the plans in place, we have the structures in place, the command and control systems in place to make sure that we can immediately scale what each nation has at its individual level to make sure that they can then deploy that to the collective endeavor when we get attacked. My worry is two things, that if we do not spend more, that's in 3, 5, 7 years from now, we might not be able to do that. And secondly, that with the present level of defense production, which is also part of your deterrence, if we don't ramp that up, that's why this is next to Ukraine and the defense spending, one of the 3 issues at the summit, that our deterrence will not be strong enough. And that is why this ramping up defense spending is such an important subject.
Okay. All right. The woman in the blue jacket, about a third of the way back.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra von Namm with DW, Germany's international public service broadcaster. One more question on the situation in the Middle East and Iran's threats to retaliate. NATO still has a mission in Iraq, so can you tell us what kind of protective measures have been undertaking to protect this mission? Thank you.
Yeah, obviously I cannot directly answer that question because that is very delicate to talk about that in public, about these type of precautions. But you can be assured that allies are in constant contact, NATO as an alliance and all the allies when it comes to the situation in the Middle East and how that could impact our collective interests in the Middle East. And of course, when it comes to the Middle East itself, Iran, our allies are urgently and on daily basis navigating that crisis.
Okay, in the row just behind her, the gentleman.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary General, you mentioned the Pacific partners. 3 of them have declined to be present with the government leaders. With the threat of China in the back of our minds, what consequence does their absence have? And have you tried urging them to reconsider?
Well, we are in very close touch, basically from week to week, month to month with our 4 partners, New Zealand, Australia, Japan and the Republic of Korea. I was visiting Japan early April, and we know that not only for us, but also for them, this relationship with NATO and between NATO and Indo-Pacific is crucial. Not because we want to extend Article 5 to the Indo-Pacific, but we know that the Euro-Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific arena are closely connected. And even more since the end of February 2022. North Korea and China and Iran, but in this case particularly focusing on China and North Korea, ramping up Russia in its attack, or unprovoked attack on Ukraine. So we will have very senior representatives here. We will have important meetings coming up. And you will always see in summits like this that the program changes from day to day a little bit. So here you have one of those examples, but I would not read too much into that.
All right, coming to this section, the gentleman with the glasses in the 6th row.
Okay. Hello, Edward Lucas and The Times. You've talked about the need to improve air defences 5-fold. The problem here is the countries that most need air defences are the least able to afford them, the smaller and poorer members of the alliance in the East. It's the bigger, richer countries, perhaps even like this one, that could afford to contribute but won't necessarily be in the forefront of a Russian air and missile attack. Can you see any way in which the alliance can spread the burden of air defences so that the rich who can pay help the poor who can't? And can you envisage even this might stretch over to Ukraine, which needs it most of all?
Well, for Ukraine, on the one hand, it's easy, and at the same time, it's very difficult. So when it comes to Ukraine, there is no debate that we all acknowledge, the US, Canada, all European allies, that Ukraine needs more air defense systems. And in Washington, there was this agreement on the irreversible path into NATO, but also the very concrete agreement to make sure that Ukraine would have more air defense systems. Luckily, on that commitment, most of that commitment has been delivered, but it is not enough to make sure that Ukraine is safe. More air defense systems are needed for Ukraine. The problem, of course, is that there are not too many companies producing them, and there is always a shortage of everything. So here, it's one of the things I personally, SACEUR, the whole of NATO is working on very hard with all allies to make sure that whatever we can supply to Ukraine, we will supply to Ukraine. On your other part of your question, it starts with all the allies making sure that they get to delivering the capability targets, and that means in reaching the 5.
At 9:30, you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We will get you back to the press conference happening live pre-NATO summit that's happening in The Hague, Netherlands. But first, I want to get you caught up now. As I said, at 9 o'clock, big story in the Charlotte area is a bit of this heat wave. Starting today, those temperatures are going to feel like the 100s, and it is definitely dangerous for really everybody, our Carolinians, especially for some of our most vulnerable populations, people living with dementia, facing unique risks as their condition can impair their ability to recognize that they're in danger. So I want to bring in here live now Chris Schneider from the Alzheimer's Foundation of America, which just released some critical safety guidance for families. Chris, thanks for joining me this morning.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on, Jane.
So, Chris, why are people with dementia or Alzheimer's at such high risk during heat waves like the one we're going to experience starting today?
Well, Jane, as you mentioned, everybody is at risk when you have heat index temperatures rising to the hundreds, but especially somebody living with dementia. And that's because of the way dementia impacts the brain. Somebody living with dementia may not recognize that they're thirsty, may not remember that they're not drinking enough. They may not be able to detect temperature changes as quickly as somebody who doesn't have dementia. And that's why it's really important for caregivers to be proactive and prepared in situations like this.
There's a concern wandering, which is what it sounds like, isn't it? Talk to me about this.
Wandering is a very common behavior among individuals living with dementia. It's also potentially dangerous because wandering is not just taking a walk outside. When somebody wanders with dementia, they can quickly become disoriented, they can become lost, they may not know how to call for help or who to call for help, or even if they need to call for help. And when you have temperatures now in the triple digits, where heat stroke can take effect in a matter of minutes, that situation becomes even more critical. And that's why it's so important for caregivers to watch for the signs of wandering. One of the most important things they can do is that wandering is often an expression of an unmet need. So make sure that their basic needs are being met. Do they have food? Are they drinking? Do they need to use the restroom? Paying attention to details like that can help prevent wandering, as can also having stimulating activities in the home, because oftentimes, especially if the person was very active before the onset of dementia, they may want to go outside for a sense of stimulation. They may want to feel a sense of purpose. So have activities in the home where it's safe, where it's cool, that they can do, whether it's different, creating a walking path around the home, having crafts, having other kinds of activities that can be cognitively stimulating. Give them that sense of stimulation without having to go outside.
And isn't it important to have some of that medical information handy in case something goes left real quick?
Without a doubt, and that's something you want to have at all times. So whether that's a photo of the person, a recent photo of the person, also have a list of familiar destinations that they like to frequent, whether it's a special park that they enjoy going to, or if they lived in the area, maybe they had a home that they no longer live in or a job they used to go to frequently. Have a list of those on hand so that if, God forbid, your loved one does wander, that you can provide that to first responders and help reduce the search and rescue time dramatically. Because in a situation like that, every moment is critical.
We talk about hydration here a lot, and not even feeling thirsty to keep on drinking water and stay hydrated. For caretakers, what should they be watching for?
Well, certainly you want to encourage hydration as much as you can, but you also want to watch for the warning signs of heat-related illnesses. And that can be excessive sweating, that can be hot, dry, red skin, that could be confusion, that could be muscle cramps. You want to watch for all of that. And again, this is where caregivers need to be proactive, because somebody with dementia may not recognize that in themselves, but they also may not be able to communicate that they're thirsty or that they're overheating. So that's where you need to be a backup here and really be proactive. And certainly if you see things like somebody fainting, if somebody exhibits excessive confusion, you want to call 911 immediately.
All right, very good. I was just going to say, when is it that time that you call 911? And then a lot of folks here don't have air conditioning. So what are other options there?
Well, a lot of municipalities will open cooling centers at times like this. So look into your municipalities, whether it's the county agency, whether it's a local government, find out where those cooling centers are. or you could go to, if you don't have a friend's house that's nearby, you could go to a library, you could go to some kind of other public place where you can go cool down. Certainly, if you start seeing somebody overheating immediately and they don't have air conditioning, apply cool compresses. If you have fans, whatever you can do to cool the person down quickly. But again, this is where caregivers really need to be an extra set of eyes to make sure that their loved one is safe. And all of this information is available on the Alzheimer's Foundation of America's website, which is alzfdn.org, or you can call our helpline at 866-232-8484 and speak to one of our licensed social workers.
Perfect. Chris Schneider from the American Alzheimer's Foundation of America with some vital information as we hit these next few days, especially beginning of summer. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for being with you.
All right. Back here in the Live Impact studio now, as we promised, let's get you back out to the NATO Summit press conference happening live from the Netherlands. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I believe they're taking questions from the media now.
Do you think regime change in Tehran would be good, or would you say don't go there? And then secondly, NATO has in the past intervened in regions outside the Euro-Atlantic. So I'm thinking of Libya in 2011, in Afghanistan. If Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, it's a hypothetical, but you talked about NATO interests and defending its interests and responding. Would NATO intervene if Iran tried to close the Strait of Hormuz? Thank you.
Well, let me say the following. I have to restrain myself on commenting. Of course, I would love to do that and answer your first question, but as Secretary General of NATO, it is my job to make sure that the 32 allies have what they need to have in terms of spending, industrial production, the support for Ukraine. That's what this summit is focusing on. And anything I would now comment, other than what I said in my introductory remarks on Iran, is not helpful. It is deviating from the core issue at hand. And that doesn't mean that individual allies will not discuss this here. It doesn't mean that individual allies might bring it to the discussion on the table, at the table on Wednesday. Of course that can happen, but it's not why NATO. And when it comes to your second question, it is true that for some years NATO has been active in theaters outside NATO territory. I think maybe the biggest change in NATO since the fall of the Berlin Wall is that we have to reconcentrate on NATO territory, because NATO territory itself is under threat. NATO territory itself is confronted with the massive buildup of Russia, the massive buildup of the military capabilities in China, the fact that North Korea, Iran, China are helping Russia, making Ukraine not into a regional conflict, but really a conflict which is concerning the whole world community, and really concentrate on that.
Okay, we have time for just a few more questions. In the center, fifth row, the woman in the beige jacket.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Bibiana Piene from Norwegian News Agency. Our Prime Minister, Jonas Gahr Støre, today declared that, I'm sorry, I have to go back to Iran, but he today declared that the US attack on Iran is in breach of international law. So I would like to hear your position on this. And also, if I may, what are your biggest fear when it comes to the escalating conflict around Iran? What could possibly happen? What do you fear most?
Now, my biggest fear would be Iran having a nuclear weapon. Really, let's focus on the essentials here. My biggest fear would be for Iran to own and be able to use and deploy a nuclear weapon. It would be a stranglehold on Israel, on the whole region and other parts of the world. And that is why NATO has said Iran should not, and this is a consistent position of NATO, Iran should not have its hands on a nuclear weapon. So, and I would not agree that this is against international law what the US did.
Okay, front all the way left.
Secretary General Latika Burke, The Nightly Australia. Going back to everything that you have discussed about the integrated threat picture between the Indo-Pacific and the Euro-Atlantic, is it your advice to Indo-Pacific countries that they also raise their defence spending to the new NATO standard?
Well, obviously, let me also here try to limit myself a little bit. I'm already very glad that as an alliance, we will decide most likely on Wednesday. There is an agreement in the North Atlantic Council on this to move to get to this minimum of 5% of defense spending. And I think that's great news to deliver all the targets we have set ourselves. Of course, I would not be against our friends in other parts of the world spending more. But for me then to have an active goal on this, I think is not befitting my position.
Okay, we'll come back to this side. The woman in the dark hair and the dark jacket.
Victoria Klipka from TV8, Republic of Moldova. I address this question from the part of our media delegation.
Right.
So, as you know, parliamentary elections will be held in Moldova this autumn, and the outcome of the vote will be crucial for the country's future in Europe. Russia has now given up on its plans to stop Moldova on its tracks, and it's utilizing the entire arsenal of hybrid warfare tactics is tested and refined during the last year's presidential elections. So Moldova returns to Russian sphere of influence would be not only dangerous for Moldova, but for the entire region. What is the view from NATO headquarters on the situation in Moldova, and how could NATO and its allies help Moldova to resist this unprecedented wave of hybrid warfare waged by Russia?
Well, I can assure you, from my previous roles, Prime Minister of the Netherlands, we were active helping Moldova as a country, and I'm sure it still continues. As NATO, there is a close cooperation with Moldova on these very practical issues, and Maia Sandu, the President of the Republic, myself, I visited her a couple of months ago when I returned from Odessa, and it was a very pleasant discussion. We are closely coordinating. I know that Romania, our ally, Bucharest, Romania, is of course also very much involved making sure that Moldova can defend itself as much as possible against hybrid threats.
Okay, and one final question. The woman in the yellow jacket here.
Thank you for this opportunity. Secretary General, with the war in Ukraine, ongoing and rising tensions in the Middle East, along with US involvement, would you say NATO is facing one of its most challenging security moments? In light of that, could this wider instability also impact the Western Balkans? Should we from the Western Balkans be worried? Thank you.
Well, of course, the Western Balkans, 5 of the 8 Western Balkan countries are part of NATO, including Montenegro, Albania, North Macedonia, and obviously Slovenia and Croatia. So NATO is very much as a collective present. And then, of course, we have in Kosovo, KFOR, and we work closely with the European Union when it comes to Bosnia and Herzegovina and EUFOR. So there are close cooperations, and I'm myself in a sort of permanent dialogue with the President of Serbia, whom I know very long, who is a close friend, but at the same time we do not always agree, and it is important to keep that conversation going. So generally, when it comes to the Western Balkans, you can be assured that individual allies, but also as a collective, we are very much focused on that part of Europe. More generally, to your question, I think it is spot on, and it is a very good last question, because let's not kid ourselves. The security situation has dramatically changed over the last couple of years. Of course, in 2014, with the occupation of Crimea, but particularly with the full onslaught in 2022 on Ukraine, and since then, there's massive reconstituting of Russia of its armed forces. At the same time, they working together with the North Koreans, with the Chinese, with the Iranians, and China itself also rapidly building up its armed forces to levels we have never ever seen before. So the international security situation has changed dramatically, and that means that this summit is so important, because what we need to have is that when the call comes to any individual ally to deliver to the collective endeavor what is necessary to defend NATO territory in case of an Article 5 attack, then we have to be sure that all allies are able to deliver those capabilities, what they promised to deliver, so that when that call comes, we stand there together, united, not only in spirit, but also in practice. And that is why we have to meet this much higher defense spending goal than we have currently.
All right, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you.
As you're watching here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus at 9:45, the press conference on the pre-summit, NATO pre-summit that's going to be taking place on Wednesday, happening this morning, taking that live here at 9:45. Thanks for joining us here every morning as we bring you the latest news and get you caught up with the weekend's news, especially on a Monday morning. If you missed the press conference and the comments from President Trump after the U.S. Made some missile strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear sites, the president did make comments Saturday night. I'm going to play that for you here in its entirety. It's about 3.5 minutes long. So previously recorded his comments from D.C. over the weekend after U.S. striking Iran's nuclear sites. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That, of course, was President Trump with his address shortly after the strike on 3 of Iran's nuclear sites. In the back there was, of course, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. As he mentioned, there was a full briefing from the Pentagon shortly following his remarks over the weekend. We're going to play this briefing for you now as we look live at Israel this morning, where strikes continue from the western part of Israel. But now a replay of the Pentagon's briefing from Saturday night following the strikes from the U.S. as the U.S. awaits what Iran's response is going to be. Here we are watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, again, previously recorded.
Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Last night, on President Trump's orders, U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike in the middle of the night against 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, in order to destroy or severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program. But it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. For the entirety of his time in office, President Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen. And the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known. No other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close. Just like Soleimani found out in the first term, Iran found out when POTUS says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation, he means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it. This is not the previous administration. The President Trump said no nukes. He seeks peace, and Iran should take that path. He sent out a truth last night saying this: any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Signed, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Iran would be smart to heed those words. He's said it before, and he means it. I want to give recognition to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Joint Staff, General Eric Kurilla at CENTCOM, who did a phenomenal job, he and his staff, all of CENTCOM. Policy across the board. This was a joint effort, and across the Pentagon effort. I want to recognize the pilots who flew those bombers, who flew those fighters, who flew those refuelers, warriors. I want to recognize the sailors on those destroyers, in those subs, on those carriers, warriors, all of them. I want to recognize our soldiers doing air defense, base defense, QRF, warriors, all of them. Every American involved in this operation performed flawlessly. And I want to give recognition to our allies in Israel as well. This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security. Our B-2s went in and out of downtown Tehran, of these nuclear sites, in and out and back without the world knowing at all. In that way, it was historic. A strike that included the longest B-2 Spirit bomber mission since 2001 and the first operational employment of the MOP, a massive ordnance penetrator. The mission demonstrated to the world the level of joint and allied integration that speak to the strength of our alliance and our joint forces. As President Trump has stated, the United States does not seek war, but let me be clear. We will act swiftly and decisively when our people, our partners, or our interests are threatened. Iran should listen to the President of the United States and know that he means it, every word. I want to give congratulations to our Commander-in-Chief. It was an honor to watch him lead last night and throughout, and to our great American warriors on this successful operation. God bless our troops. God bless America. And we give glory to God for his providence and continue to ask for his protection. I turn it over now to the chairman for specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for recognizing all of our folks out there doing our nation's work, and nice to see everybody on this early Sunday morning. Last night on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This was a complex and high-risk mission carried out with exceptional skill and discipline by our joint force. I want to thank every service member, planner, operator that made this mission possible. Their actions reflect the highest standards of the United States Armed Forces. This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and the time and place of our nation's choosing. This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. I'll refer you to the graphic on the side as I walk you through some of the operational details. At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command area of responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the president stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of 4th and 5th generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority. This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the president clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the president and the secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners, and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible. I am particularly proud of our discipline related to operational security, something that was of great concern to the President, the Secretary, General Kurilla, and me, and we will continue to focus on this. As we stand here this morning, many assets are still airborne, and we have hundreds deployed. I ask that we keep our warfighters on their way home and our deployed service member in our thoughts. Our joint force remains ready to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests in the region. Thank you very much.
We will take a few questions, Phil.
Me?
Yeah.
So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Green. No, behind you.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, can you tell me, was there a particular moment when the president decided to pull the trigger on this operation where he said, now, rather than being something in the holster, now we're going to pull the trigger on it?
I would just say, having the opportunity to witness his leadership, he was fully committed to the peace process. Wanted a negotiated outcome, gave Iran every single opportunity, and unfortunately was met by stonewalling, which is why he gave them plenty of time to continue to come to the table and give up enrichment, give up the nuclear program. But there was I won't say the particular moment, there was certainly a moment in time where he realized that it had to be a certain action taken in order to minimize the threat to us and our troops. Yeah.
General, you say that General Kirilov increased force protection in Iraq, Syria, and Gulf, in those areas. Were they given any advance warning the attacks were coming? And also, Mr. Secretary, when were congressional leaders notified? How long before the attacks took place?
Sir, to your first question, the risk has clearly been rising over the last few weeks in the region. Based on that, and not a particular awareness of this operation, we've made smart decisions to minimize the risk to U.S. forces in the region.
So they were given no advance warning?
No, sir.
And congressional?
They were notified after the planes were safely out. Well, we complied with the notification requirements of the War Powers Act.
After the attacks, they were notified?
They were immediately thereafter. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary. Two quick questions. Do you believe you completely destroyed Iranian nuclear program? And how about Iranian ballistic missiles? Your ally as Israel always saying that is biggest threat. And second question is very, what will be your next step if Iran or militias under Iranian influence in the region attack U.S. interests or allies in the region?
And you can chime in on this too, Mr. Chairman. The battle damage assessment is ongoing, but our initial assessment, as the chairman said, is that all of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect, which means especially in Fordo, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there. Ultimately, wherever it may be, whether it's in Iraq or Syria or bases in the Gulf, as the president said, it would be as the chairman said, it would be a very bad idea for Iran or its proxies to attempt to attack American forces. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Regarding retaliations, Iran and North Korea are cooperating on nuclear and missile development. Do you think there is a possibility that Iran, North Korea, and the other forces, such as China, will join forces to retaliate against the United States?
Well, unfortunately, because of the policies under the previous administration, we drove those countries together, and ultimately that creates a challenging environment. For this particular operation, the focus is on Iran and Iranian nuclear capabilities. That's our focus here, is to not just say that they can't have, but President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening. Yes.
Thank you very much. General Kane, I understand OPSEC, I respect OPSEC. Can you say at all what security procedures are being taken to protect U.S. troops in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East? And Secretary Hegseth, as a global war on terrorism veteran, what do you say to veterans who may be concerned the U.S. is getting into another open-ended war in the Middle East over weapons of mass destruction?
Thanks, sir, for the question. I won't comment on what force protection measures are being taken in the region. What I will say is we're being proactive and not reactive, and being very thoughtful about ensuring that we do all that we can to protect our forces out there.
And I would just say, as the President has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. It doesn't mean it limits our ability to respond. We will respond if necessary. The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the President gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. Those were the targets. That's what was struck. That was overwhelming. That's what was overwhelming. That's what the Iranian regime needs to understand, as the President put out last night. He wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation. Yes, hold on. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question for the Secretary and the Chairman. How was this strike coordinated with the Israelis on a strategic level, militarily, and on a tactical level? Was there any direct Israeli military participation in this operation?
Well, I would say certainly Israel had an incredible military success, especially at the beginning and ongoing, in degrading Iranian capabilities, in degrading Iranian launchers, MRBMs. It's been incredible to watch what our ally Israel has been able to do. And there certainly have been conversations. I mean, General Kurilla at CENTCOM has worked closely in the defense of Israel for many years. And part of this operation was the defense of Israel and the ongoing defense of Israel. But as it pertains to this strike, this was U.S. operated and U.S. led.
We took advantage of some of the preparatory work that's been done over the past week and a half in terms of axis of approach. I won't get into the particulars, but as the Secretary said, it was a U.S. strike. We made sure we were not in the same piece of airspace and sky. Aside from that, that was the extent of it.
We'll take a couple more. Yeah, right there.
Question to the Secretary first. Are you concerned whatsoever now about the reaction from U.S. allies given the strike, particularly those in the Gulf? And to the Chairman, if I may, I understand you don't want to speak to specific assets and force protection measures, but do you anticipate at least having to bring in any further assets from other theaters to aid in force protection over the coming days?
We certainly understand the challenges of allies in the region. And we have been respectful and in working in collaboration with them as it pertains to basing and sensitivities there. Ultimately, they've got a lot of assets and people in those locations also where American troops are co-located. So that's a consideration of ours. We've been in close consultation with them, and we appreciate the support that we have got.
Thanks for the question on sort of the global picture, and as you know, that's one of my jobs, is to look globally at the entire range of challenges. We are always carefully considering our force posture around the world and then offering options to the Secretary and to the President. I won't comment on any future things, but the American people should know that we carefully consider those moves around the world and try to modulate as needed our force structure in the region.
Absolutely. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. What communications are being sent to the Iranians right now, and is there any possibility of diplomacy now or in the coming days?
I can only confirm that there are both public and private messages being directly delivered to the Iranians in multiple channels, giving them every opportunity to come to the table. They understand precisely what the American position is, precisely what steps they can take to allow for peace, and we hope they do so. Yes.
The president may not want an open-ended conflict. The Iranians may disagree. Are you prepared for a protracted war?
Well, anything can happen in conflict. We acknowledge that. But the scope of this was intentionally limited. That's the message that we're sending. With the capabilities of the American military, nearly unlimited. So Iran, in that sense, has a choice. But we've made it very clear to them, this is nuclear sites, this is nuclear capabilities, this is the line that the president set, and we set that back. Now is the time to come forward for peace. But I think one of the takeaways from this as well is the unprecedented level of ongoing cooperation. I can't speak highly enough of the chairman and his staff and General Kurilla in CENTCOM, what they've done to look around the corner, to pre-position, to understand how an operation like this comes together. The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace. But I could not be more proud of how this building operated, of the precision, the sensitivity, and the professionalism of the troops involved in this effort. I will take one more. We'll take one more question. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Concerning the justification for these strikes, in March, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released their threat assessment, concluding, quote, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear programs he suspended in 2003, unquote. So what new intelligence does the U.S. have since then that the Iranians have changed their position on nuclear weapons? And does this new intelligence come from U.S. sources and methods, or are we getting this information from other countries?
Well, I would just simply say that the president's made it very clear. He's looked at all of this, all of the intelligence, all of the information, and come to the conclusion that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat, and was willing to take this precision operation to neutralize that threat in order to advance American national interests, reduce the Iranian nuclear program, and obviously collective self-defense of ourselves and our allies. So he looked at all of it, understood the nature of the threat, and took bold action I think the American people would expect in a commander-in-chief. That's all we've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You watch live there, previously recorded, but here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus, the event that took place yesterday morning, a Pentagon briefing after U.S. struck Iran's nuclear sites, 3 of them Saturday night. That press conference taking place with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Air Force General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. As we look live now from Haifa and the Israel skyline, as they are continuing to exchange strikes between Israel and Iran this morning. The U.S. on high alert, bracing for Iran's response, who avowed some sort of plot or retaliation because of U.S.'s actions on Saturday. Regarding your fuel prices, we are still waiting to hear that as well, how this affects oil, barrels of oil. But right now, as we take a live look at the New York Stock Exchange, it is opening up and hovering here around 200 points right now on this Monday morning. More to come, we're sure, on the markets, financial and oil. And thanks for joining us here on Live Impact News again. I'm Jane Monreal. Coming up on 10:20 on a Monday morning. A lot happened over the weekend. Our big story locally across the Carolinas is this heat, and we have been preparing to be weather alert for the next few days because of the temperatures. Although air temp 95, mid to upper 90s, certainly the feel like is something else in those triple digits, as we heard from our meteorologist Chris Mulcahy earlier earlier this morning. So maybe if you can, try to escape to the water. Live look over Lake Norman. Freedom Boat Club looks nice. I've seen a couple of boaters out there this morning getting ready to perhaps take a nice breeze. It was busy I remember driving over Lake Wylie over the weekend.
Yeah.
We had just some sightseeing. Sure. Didn't stop it or anything, but looked over
Busy.
and oh wow, folks
Busy,
are in their
busy.
boats on the lake. Good call, everyone.
Yeah. Invite us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need a good friend with a boat.
Same.
To invite us. All right. On a serious note, friends, though, we need to talk about what this is going to do as far as your health. It is certainly a health risk because heat-related deaths, the number one weather-related deaths. And so something to think about. We had some tips that are posted on WCNC.com, especially for vulnerable groups like the elderly and especially those with dementia or Alzheimer's disease. On a practical note, for all of us, we need to be concerned about our power grid, the kind of strain you could be taking on with a number of days here calling for the AC to blast. I know it's going to feel pretty good, but you might want to take some considerations into mind. And so Nick Sturdivant last weekend, he did talk to Duke Energy about some of the things we need to think about as far as that goes. There's this previously recorded interview from Nick Sturdivant and Caroline, right?
Caroline Fountain was
Thank
her
you.
name.
Caroline Fountain from Duke Energy here on WCNC Plus. Thanks for joining us this morning.
I want to bring in live here on Live Impact News, Caroline Fountain with Duke Energy. She heard what I said. She started laughing. Look, you guys you guys do fantastic work, especially the crews out there in the field. But how can folks, and you're talking about saving money and saving energy. We'll start here. I talked about my bill. You don't want to see that. How can folks save some money when it comes to this heat and when it comes to using that AC properly?
Well, for sure. Well, today is the perfect day to talk about it. It's the first day of summer. And just like you said, we are going to be seeing some high temperatures heading our way very soon, this weekend into next week. And so essentially, this is the time, right, in order to take advantage of a couple of quick and easy tips that actually people can do right now as they're watching. So the number one that we recommend is turning your thermostat to the highest comfortable setting. So the tundra, I'm not sure about that, but setting that to the highest comfortable temperature for your own family, right? And then second, really using those ceiling fans. That's actually going to make it feel. You'll be able to kind of play and adjust with your thermostat there. And then, also for me, I don't have any trees around my home. So closing those blinds, closing those curtains will really help keep the cool air in and the hot air out, especially as the sun is beating down in the afternoon sun.
As you were saying that, I can control it through an app on my phone. I just bumped up, it was on 68.
Yeah, tell us. Where do you have it at?
It was on 68. And so I bumped it up to about 72. I just want to, before I get to my next question, is that good?
But it's really up to your own family's personal comfort settings. However, I love that you just mentioned that you're using that through your app. You've obviously got a smart thermostat, and that's a real huge benefit for folks. I'll just do a quick plug here for the things that I have here next to me. So any Duke Energy customer who's a homeowner, you can get a free home energy assessment. So an energy advisor can come to your home and see what opportunities you have in your particular home to save energy, which translates into savings on your bill. And then you'll also get this free kit, which is great. You got caulking, you got weather stripping, you got this charging thing, you got a couple of great ways to save on energy efficient water use. And so, with that, if you are interested in a smart thermostat, they will actually install that free of charge for you during the assessment. So it's a great way, like you said, when you're away from home, just crank it up a couple degrees. And then, on your way home, you can turn it back down and then it's comfortable from when you're home.
Some great advice there. So we talk about saving money, that's important, but why is it important to save energy?
Yeah, well, well, you pay for what you use, right? And so when you're using more energy, especially during the summer, you got to think, even if you're keeping your settings to the same degree, well, guess what? The hotter it gets outside, the harder your AC unit is going to be working. And so if you want to be having larger savings on your bill, that translates into saving more energy at home. And that can be, caulking your windows. It can be using, weather stripping for your doors. If you see a little bit of light through your door, well, guess what? You probably need a little bit of weather stripping there. Like I said, closing those blinds, using those ceiling fans.
It's Caroline Fountain with Duke Energy. Caroline, can you talk about some of the financial assistance programs? Because there are some folks that they're struggling to pay their bills.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different ways that we can help customers in need. So one, you can sign up for a payment installment plan. So that's, something you can do. Also, we partner with community agencies. So for, low income home energy assistance program, so you can apply for assistance through that. We have Duke Energy's Share the Light Fund you can apply for as well. And actually, we have a brand new tool that went live this month on our website under the Special Assistance tab, where you can actually look up your local agency by just your zip code. And those are agencies that have recently partnered with us in order to help those customers in need. So great new tool to check out.
One more question before I let you go, so you can enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend. What is it like for crews out in the field who work in the heat, but they're also making sure folks are comfortable at home?
For sure. So as you can imagine, safety is our number one priority. So making sure that our crews are properly prepared as they head out into the field, plenty of water, taking plenty of breaks. But we also know that it's, a priority to get electricity reliably to our customers. So it's really, making that service as well as keeping our crews safe.
Good reminder tips as you take this the next few days to heart, and seriously stay hydrated, keep your power at a decent temperature so you're not paying so much at the end. We want everyone to stay cool and safe as we are weather alert. Big sports news in the way of basketball. They went to a Game 7, Carlene. They did it.
They did it.
You know who's so happy about that?
Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City. Same as our big boss.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Our big boss,
our news director. He was watching intently. Sturdivant, he's just a basketball fan,
right?
So he was hoping for a Game 7, and they did it. So the talk is, does this make for OKC the new basketball dynasty in the making? Who knows, right? But basketball top of mind, and the NBA, the draft, is going to be taking place this week. So we have our sports director, Nick Carboni, collecting really important interviews, getting psyched because Charlotte Hornets, we're going to have a top pick and hopefully can get the Charlotte Hornets on the map to some kind of winning season. We're going to stay positive.
We're staying positive.
We are staying positive. Coming up on 10:30, though, previously recorded, our sports director, Nick Carboni, talking to ESPN's Paul Biancardi, discussing the upcoming draft. If you missed it, here it is on WCNC+.
WCNC Charlotte Sports Director Nick Carboni here in our live Impact News studio. We are talking NBA draft. As I sit here today, round 1 is just 6 days away. Hornets with the number 4 overall pick, and we are going to be talking draft all the way leading up to the big night on our WCNC Draft Night Special. You can watch that live Wednesday night here at 7 o'clock on WCNC+. So we've been trying to talk to guests that, maybe pay attention to college basketball, maybe pay attention to what the Hornets are doing. How about one that's all of the above and then some? I want to welcome in my good friend Paul Biancardi, recruiting director for ESPN. He's also their a college basketball and NBA draft analyst and puts together the ESPN Top 100. So he is all over these kids from when they are in high school all the way leading up to the draft. So, Paul, first of all, thank you for joining me. Secondly, what is it like to follow these kids from when they're just getting started in their basketball careers all the way to draft night and you see them walk the stage?
You know, Nick, that's a great point. I get to watch these kids, evaluate them, get to know them as people, their parents, their families, their siblings, and I feel like I'm on the journey with them, you know, from high school to college. It's such a big decision where to go and who you're going to play for and all those great decisions they have to make. Some think about actually what major they're going to study. And then the guys that have a chance to move on to be NBA draft picks, whether it's the first round, second round, you know, I pay attention to everyone, even guys that become free agents.
Who's the guy you're proudest of hitting on in that top 100 that went on to become, you know, a lottery pick or an NBA All-Star? Like, who's the first guy that comes to mind?
Gosh, it's been 15 years, Nick. So it's a loaded question.
You got a high success. You got a high batting average too, but I don't know if there's one that nobody else saw coming, but Paul Biancardi.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll tell you one guy recently that I hit on, which was Reed Sheppard. I made it known that I thought he was a McDonald's All-American, and he became a McDonald's All-American. Now, I did not know he'd be a one and done, but I did think he had the ability to be a first-round NBA draft pick. It just happened a lot faster than I even thought, and I was really high on Reed Sheppard. So that's a recent one that I can think of. But boy, there's been some misses too. Now, let's just talk about the hits. But there's been a lot of guys you think that, you know, have a great opportunity, you know, to be something special, and for different reasons they don't make it.
Well, I don't think Cooper Flagg is going to be a miss. I mean, obviously he was your number one in his class, and classified early. Actually, you had him graded as a 97. Is there anybody you've seen like him? Like, is there who would be the closest comparison coming out of high school and then one and done and being the top pick?
Well, first of all, let me backtrack. I first watched Cooper Flagg as a rising sophomore coming in high school out of Maine. His AAU coach was Andy Bedard. Andy played for us at Boston College. So I get a phone call from Andy. He said, "Hey, coach, you got to see this kid. He's special." I said, "Where's he from?" He goes, "He's from Maine." I said, "Did he play basketball or hockey?"
Yeah.
You know, how good can this kid be out of Maine? He says, "I'm telling you, he's really good." And Andy played for us at 2 years. We won the Big East championship. Then Andy transferred to Maine to finish his career. So Andy had a real good idea of what a high-level basketball player should look like. When I watched Cooper Flagg on film, I was more than interested. He was about 6'6 plus. You know, you could see the versatility and athleticism right away. It's hard to see athletic ability on film. And then shortly thereafter, I saw him play in the summer live, and I felt that at that point he could be really special when it comes to high school basketball. You know, the ESPN Top 100, a ranked player, somebody who can go as a high major prospect. And there were a lot of holes to fill in, but not that many holes. But you could just see how special he was and where he was destined to. So Cooper Flagg, for me, is a no-bust prospect in this draft.
Yeah, you talk about filling in the holes that there were, the few that there were. Is that one of his best attributes, to take something that may not be a strength and turn it into one pretty quickly? It seems like he's done, I mean, classifying early, coming out early into college, one of the youngest players in college, and he's player of the year.
Yeah, let's not forget, he's supposed to be entering Duke right now as a freshman. He reclassified to become a freshman last year, so now he's in the draft. The elite players do that to move ahead in the draft quickly so they can get into that second contract a little bit faster. But Cooper Flagg is everything that you would want in a prospect. And you mentioned it, he gets better at everything for one simple reason. He's a worker. He dedicates himself to the game. He's pure. You know, he may be on social media, but that doesn't drive his existence. What drives his existence is playing the game, competing, and winning. And when he doesn't win, he gets frustrated very quickly. So what happens is he goes back in the gym and continues to work on things that could be just a little bit better, or something that he's really good at, he wants to be great at. Now, he's the ultimate worker. It's his approach to the game, his mindset during the game. And Nick, it's as simple as this. He is one of the most competitive and coachable stars that I've seen in my 15 plus years at ESPN and in my 22 years coaching college basketball.
Consensus number one all the way next Wednesday night. Don't let those clickbait headlines fool you. Is Dylan Harper the consensus?
No.
is Dylan?
No. Who's putting that out there?
They popped up. We pay no attention to that. There's no doubt Cooper Flagg's going to Dallas.
Let me just make one quick point. Everybody who does a mock draft has never been in a draft room.
All right, so we should have some fun with all the avenues we could take with this. So Dylan Harper, is he the consensus number 2? I know that you had Ace Bailey with a really high grade in your top 100. Seems to be a lot going on with him in this pre-draft process. So do you think Dylan Harper is the surefire number 2, whether it's the San Antonio or whether somebody else is going to go up and get him?
Yeah, I think he's the best overall basketball player after Cooper Flagg. And Cooper Flagg has productivity and potential. Same goes for Dylan Harper. When he was in high school, he was the number 1 player at one time in the class of 2025. So that shows you his star ability. I called him a bigger, stronger Jalen Brunson, left-handed, great frame, could take contact. He can carry defenders into the lane. He is really good, Nick, at driving kick and ball screen offense. Capable three-point shooter, excellent passer, plays with his head up, his eyes are wide open, looking to make the next correct play. Really good competitor, needs to grow in the game defensively. But I'll tell you this, at 17 years old, USA Basketball put him on the 19 and under team. The reason they did it, his maturity level, his decision-making, and his work habits. And let's not forget his dad, Ron Harper, 5-time NBA champ. I mean, this guy was born to be an NBA player.
All right, so we got to talk about Ace Bailey because the talent is very obviously there, and you have a unique perspective because you've covered, evaluated, been around these guys since earlier in their high school careers, and you're around the people that are around the players as well. There's been a lot of negativity about Ace Bailey in the pre-draft process. Where do you think that comes from, and what do you think of him as a potential NBA player?
Well, first of all, beside the evaluating and the interviews and being around the people that they are around, I had a chance to coach Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and Ace Bailey at the Steph Curry camp. It's his private camp out in San Francisco where he only invites 15 of the top players in the country. There's a small group of coaches. I was invited into that circle, which I'm very grateful for, but I got to be on the court with those guys. And obviously I studied what Ace Bailey did at Rutgers and knew everything about him in the high school ranks. As talented as anybody in this draft, maybe more talented just in terms of pure upside than Cooper Flagg. Okay, but he doesn't have some of the intangibles just yet that some of the other players in the top half of the draft have. And I don't know why people say he's sliding, because when you look at the drafts from the past, he was projected as maybe, coming into this year, maybe number 2, number 3. We're talking about now, 5, maybe 6? I don't know if that's a slide or just a compliment to some of the other guys who've made some progression over the last couple of months. Ace Bailey, he's a 6'7", we found out at the Combine, measured, a shot maker, and that's what he does best. He's a great athlete, second best athlete in the draft, in my opinion, to VJ Edgecombe. And he can score from anywhere on the floor. He's got great versatility and athleticism. He's today's modern small forward type. Why he's moving down a little bit, I'm not quite sure. His talent is undeniable. And, he has to pick up on some of the intangibles. I wouldn't say Ace Bailey is an everyday player just yet. Like Cooper Flagg, he's an everyday guy. Ace Bailey needs to become an everyday guy, but he is uber talented, and he'll be somewhere in the top 5 in this draft.
If the Hornets do take a swing at that massive potential for Ace Bailey, I mean, Charlotte, as you know, they're still a relatively young team. They haven't accomplished what they want and gotten to the playoffs, just a couple play-in appearances. They're still kind of seeing if somebody will emerge as that, leader on the court and off. What can the Hornets do to surround Ace Bailey and give him the tools that he needs to put that all together, as you mentioned?
Yeah, he would need a lot of attention from a maturity standpoint, showing him the way, explaining how to be a professional, how to time management your day, how to watch film in the strength and conditioning room, pre-practice, post-practice. He got a taste of that at Rutgers, but obviously with him and Dylan Harper, I mean, they didn't have enough maturity and experience around them to make the NCAA tournament. And that same measure holds true for Ace Bailey when he comes to the NBA. So if he were to be with the Hornets, Coach Lee and the staff and Jeff Peterson would have to make sure they really nurture him in a way where they give him confidence, not confidence to play, but confidence that they believe in him, and he'll need reps. I mean, he is a star waiting to happen talent-wise, but he's the type of guy, I believe you can't put him down in the G League. I mean, he's not going to learn anything. He's already got the talent. He's already got the confidence in his game, but he needs to know that he needs to be shown the way in every way as a professional. I think he would have to stay with the team and somehow find some minutes on a team, as you mentioned, Nick, relatively young, knocking on the door to be a playoff team.
All right, just to show people how much Paul Biancardi nails the top 100 every year, the same basically guys in the top 5 of your 2024 top 100 are projected to be basically top 5 picks, and Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson was number 5 for you. I mean, he could go 4 to the Hornets. Do VJ Edgecombe and Con Knipple give the Hornets the mix of talent but also like maturity that they might need right away from a rookie?
Well, let me say this. If Ace Bailey's on the board, I don't think there's a decision to be made.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, you can't leave that talent on the board. You would have drafted the best talent that's left on the board, and I think that's the job of an NBA franchise when you're drafting this high in the lottery. And if Ace Bailey hits, I mean, some people say, and he does remind me a little bit, just backing up on him a little bit, Michael Porter Jr. type, and he could be better. So if he's on the board, I think you have to take a serious look at him. VJ Edgecombe fits, Con Knipple fits, Trey Johnson fits. A lot of guys fit, but there's a little difference in terms of talent between Ace Bailey and those guys. And I would say the next most talented player on the board is VJ Edgecombe. And he comes in as the best athlete, in my mind, vertically in this draft. Great finisher in transition, straight line driver, can be an excellent on-ball defender, and that could take a lot of pressure off of LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. Somebody who's willing to guard the ball, fight over ball screens, and be a defensive presence. He averaged over 2 steals a game at Baylor. He does a little bit of everything well, and sometimes people don't talk about his shooting because he's not a shooter, but when you study his numbers and you watch his mechanics, they're both good. He shot 39% in the Big 12 from 3, 34% overall. He's a worker, high character guy. I mean, really high character. Does everything in a mature, professional way. Guys would love being with him. He's a great teammate. And I think those numbers from the shooting perspective would go up. And then you get the defense, the straight line drive ability. He doesn't have to take shots from other guys, but he could be capable to score some points each game, and he gives it to you on the defensive end. Con Knipple, my mind, the best pure shooter in the draft. If you're going to throw the ball to somebody in a stationary spot and say, make this shot, I'm throwing it to Con Knipple. So he's a floor spacer. He's a great catch and shoot guy, very good passer. Those are his elite skills. shooting and passing. He can shoot on the move, but he's great off the catch, and he's somebody who brings functionality to an offense. He can move the ball, he can make the assist, and he's a guy you can throw it to, and maybe, just maybe, he'll throw it back to you because he has that kind of awareness. Probably has one of the highest IQs in this draft.
Is Edgecombe a player that, with his defensive intensity, and obviously the Hornets and Charles Lee, I think, did a lot of good work last year with this group to try to get him to lock in more on that side. Is he somebody that could both take some of that responsibility on his own as a rookie and kind of take it away from some guys, but also could it rub off on, you know, a team that's got to improve in that respect?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think, now, would he be a stopper as a rookie? No, but he would be a key defensive piece. With those steals come a selection only maybe Baylor will chart. He covers ground well. He understands defensive concepts at an early age. He'll give you the competitiveness and the coachability and the basketball defensive IQ. And that can help stabilize the Hornets defensively. They weren't bad defensively. Some nights they were bad, but overall they were pretty average, I would say, defensively. And let's not forget, they never had their whole team all season long, so you had no idea what type of defensive or offensive team the Hornets were last year. And you don't know what they're going to be next year. But VJ Edgecombe can definitely give them something that I believe that, you know, outside of Cooper Flagg, that nobody else can give them on the defensive end.
You were obviously high on Trey Johnson coming out of high school. He's certainly in line to be a probable top 10 pick. What are your thoughts on him, the year he had at Texas, what he projects as, and, you know, if it's a possibility at 4 of, you know, Edgecombe or Bailey or Knipple, Johnson, like, does he fit that kind of top 5 profile in your mind right now?
In my mind, he does. He's the best pure scorer in the draft. And when you start to dig into the Hornets and their numbers, right, they averaged a little bit more than most of the league in terms of three-point field goal attempts, but they were third worst in percentages. They were a low assist team. Okay, now why were they a low assist team? Was it the passing ability? Was it the lack of shooting ability, right? We don't know that yet because they were not a whole group last year. But I think if you look at Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, and that's who this draft pick is going to fall between, meaning that person's going to slot in between those two. Now you still have Josh Green, Trey Mann, who is a free agent, but Trey Mann was their best three-point shooter last year, percentage-wise. I think Trey Johnson can come in, Nick, and get a bucket. He's one of those guys, you know, like an Ace Bailey, that plays with great offensive confidence. You don't have to run a play for him, and he can still score in terms of a catch-and-shoot three. Trey Johnson has the wiggle in his dribble to get to an open spot. He's a great shot creator, but he's not afraid to do it. And when you put LaMelo Ball, who's a great passer, who can find Trey Johnson, Brandon Miller, who attracts so much defensive help, I think Trey Johnson takes a lot of pressure off of Ball and Brandon Miller. And he's certainly conceivable at the 4 pick. Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Con Knipple could all be there, should all be there at 4. To me, it's VJ Edgecombe and Ace Bailey. Which one of those two guys is going to be the number 3 pick? And then Charlotte's going to have to make a decision after that.
Listen, if we had had this conversation last year, Paul, I would have never admittedly uttered the name Tidjane Salaün. I know it's a bit of a more well-known, you know, there's a lot of more well-known commodities at the top end of this draft, but, you know, maybe the Hornets get a haul and they want to move back. Is a guy like Jakachonis somebody you think they might be interested in? Asange or even Malawach from Duke, would those, you know, guys be appealing to you still in the top 10?
Depends what you're getting for him, right?
You're right, yeah.
About trading, you're at number 4 in one of the best drafts that we've had in a while. You're going to get a great asset. Whether or not this prospect draft pick works out or not, you're going to get someone that down the line you could trade if you need to. I'm not moving on this pick. unless they can get to number 2 for Dylan Harper.
Right.
You know what they have and what somebody else would want. So I think they're in a great spot. They just have to analyze, okay, whoever Philly takes at 3, that's basically going to leave a couple of guys on the board to choose from. You have to pick out which problem you want to solve first. And for me, the way the Hornets have played under Charles Lee with the high 3-point field goal attempts and their low 3-point field goal percentage, to me, it's somebody that can put the ball in the basket. You got Bailey, you've got Trey Johnson, you've got Con Knippel, and you have VJ Edgecombe, who's maybe not the best shooter of that group, but has huge upside. So you can't leave talent on the board. And to me, it's Bailey and Edgecombe are the most 2 talented players that could be available for the Hornets.
All right, Paul Biancardi, recruiting director from ESPN, NBA draft and college basketball analyst, ESPN Top 100. All right, man, before I let you go, who's the next Cooper Flagg? Who should I be writing down for the next couple of years?
Well, let me tell you about next year's draft real quickly. If you think this year's draft is good, and it is great, you talked about the top 5 guys in this draft. They were all in the top 5 in the ESPN 100. They're all one-and-done guys, McDonald's All-Americans. Nick, next year's draft at the top, A.J. DiBonsa, who's at BYU. You got Darren Peterson at Kansas. Both of those guys are going to be near the top of the draft. They'll be fighting it out for the number 1 spot. And Cameron Boozer, the son of Carlos Boozer, is at Duke, and he's going to have a Cooper Flagg-like effect at Duke. He'll be a lottery pick. And Nate Ament at Tennessee, he's a 6'10" skilled forward. Those 4 guys will be at the top of next year's draft, and they are as good, if not better, than the top of this draft.
Well, I hope the Hornets are not at the top of next year's draft,
Yes,
but if they are,
let's
hopefully
hope not.
hopefully some lottery luck in top 4. Paul Biancardi, thanks so much for joining us.
All right, Nick, thanks for having me.
You got it. All right. Again, our NBA draft special on WCNC Plus tips off 7 o'clock Wednesday.
All right, Nick just telling you that the NBA draft special with Locked On with our Nick Carboni and Danielle Stein this Wednesday at 7 p.m. here only on WCNC Plus. So set your calendar reminders as things are going to kick things off, and we hope for the best for the Hornets. You know, we've talked so much about basketball. So I almost forgot that we do have hockey to keep in mind, and Charlotte Checkers are in it after winning over the weekend. Yep. So this is very exciting. You can catch the game tonight on WCNC 36.2. If you look at your guide, it'll probably say True Crime, but that's us. And you're going to watch the game here. So if they win tonight, what are they? 3-2 right now. Yeah. The Canucks. So this is a must-win
They have to win
with the Checkers. All right, so if they win tonight, then they play for the championship Wednesday at Bojangles. But I'm going.
I believe. Yeah, you're going tonight.
I'm going tonight.
Maybe you're the good luck charm.
Hopefully, Carlene.
Yeah.
So, you know, my husband said that they won. Oh my gosh.
won.
Do you want to
Yep.
go to the game tomorrow? I said, yeah. Can we
Let's
get
go.
tickets? They're not sold out yet. Yes, they are not sold out. Well, that was as of last night.
Right.
So I'll be there with my red on. And then if not, you can watch it at home, comfort from your own couch, 36.2 on WCNC Plus. All right, so we got some good sports. We got some good teams here in the Queen City. And with that, we are going to replay an interview because June is also, it's very active in sports, but it's also active for men's health. June is Men's Health Month. Late last week, it was Friday, we did have a good discussion with an Atrium nurse, Joanne Halsinger, she goes by JC, talking about bone health, something that you might not know about will affect men, osteoporosis. So if you did not catch this on Friday on WCNC Plus, replaying this interview for you now, and this is Men's Health on Osteoporosis. And thanks for joining us here on WCNC Plus. And telling your friends from across the country, because we also have great conversations here, and we talk about issues like health. June is Men's Health Month, and today we want to discuss a health issue that's quite often overlooked when it comes to men, osteoporosis. While many of us think that it only pertains to women's health, there's actually a reality that is quite startling. 1 in 4 men diagnosed with osteoporosis. So joining us right now here in the Live Impact studio, Joanne Holzinger from Atrium MSKI here in Charlotte, as well as the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation. Joanne, who goes by JC, is here, and JC, thanks for joining us now. We appreciate you coming in, JC. When we hear osteoporosis, like I said, we think of older women. Why is this condition overlooked in men?
Well, men in general tend to not go to the doctor quite as often. And there's a myth out there that osteoporosis only happens in women. But in reality, like you just mentioned, 1 in every 4 men will suffer an osteoporotic fracture. In fact, more men will break a bone from osteoporosis than will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, which is a pretty shocking statistic. There's over 80,000 men in the U.S. who break their hip every year. And even though less men have osteoporosis, the consequences of, for example, a hip fracture are much more significant. Over 37% of men who break their hip will die within 1 year.
Oh my goodness.
Which is
Yeah,
scary.
quite scary and startling. Why are the risk factors so high for men dealing with osteoporosis then?
I think it's, people are not as aware that it happens in men. Our population is aging. Men are living longer now. You know, women tend to get osteoporosis younger after menopause. Men really start to develop osteoporosis about 10 years after women. So if you're not aware, osteoporosis is a silent disease. You don't feel like your bones are hurting or that they're weak. And most of the time, unfortunately, you don't get diagnosed until you break a bone.
Oh boy. I want to show a picture here of what a normal bone looks like, JC, versus osteoporosis. So stark difference here. Explain what's happening.
Well, basically, even though our bones look very strong on the outside, the inside of our bone structure looks more like an English muffin. And normally there's a constant remodeling that goes on inside the bone, but as we age, that remodeling shifts to mainly bone removal instead of building new bone. So as you can see, the architecture starts to break down and those nooks and crannies start to get bigger. So the inside of our bone is much more hollow. Then when we fall, it is much easier to break.
Okay, so obvious question here. Let's talk about prevention. What can people do, really men and women do then, to not only prolong any sort of weakening of the bones, but strengthen and go the other direction?
Well, diet and vitamins like calcium and vitamin D supplements, if you're not getting them in your diet. The Mediterranean diet is actually the best diet for
everything, all health, yes.
Yes. You know, cold water fish, dark green leafy veggies, and you'll be surprised, the newest superfood for bone health is prunes.
Oh, okay.
They did a huge study and found that people who eat about 5 of the dried prunes a day significantly increase their bone density. The bones love it.
All right,
so
we're getting some prunes.
And then, of course, you know, weight-bearing exercise is very important.
but also strength and resistance
Strength training, right. I mean, that goes both men and
Yes.
women, too.
And interestingly, strength and resistance training seems to have a bigger impact with men. It changes their body.
You've been watching a previously recorded interview between myself and Joanne Halsinger from Atrium, also talking about men's health and osteoporosis. You can find more information on WCNC.com. Charlotte Today is up next. Thanks for watching, and I'll join you again on WCNC Charlotte News at 4. Have a great day.